Steve Geppi, and I'd like to welcome you to Geppi's Entertainment Museum.
Hello, I'm David North, and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Comic Book. I'm your costume expert, and we're going to follow up on topics on cosplay, upcoming conventions, something to keep an eye out for, and we'll also follow up on Facebook questions that you post to us. Welcome to Two Guys and a Comic Book. Tonight's episode is current events in the Baltimore area. Now, if you've been visiting here in Baltimore, you've been up here possibly for Otakon or recently our Baltimore's version of Comic-Con. We're not as big as LA, but give us some time. What I'd like to discuss is the costumes. Most people I've seen start from get-go. The youngsters are more than happy to have tinfoil swords, which are allowable downtown Baltimore City, because you're not allowed to have actual weapons here. You will get arrested. But also, it's a great way to start. And I would like to discuss the availability of communications, the technology that has improved, and how it's bringing the forefront of artists and creativity. Okay, one of the Facebook questions I've received is, how do you start in costuming? Well, if you've seen some of the face-off, I've done some of the casting work. I actually have my full 3/4 casting. I was working on my third Klingon head. But it's not that hard. It's really not. The easiest way to start, and you might see the youngsters do this, is mom and dad might also help you out in Halloween costumes. Start with your basic paper oblate. If you've maybe seen the cosplay shows, one of the ladies actually did a comic book hero, and she made it out of comics. But be regards that you have to wear something, so be aware that the paper does not wear as easily as clothes. But start with that. Your first idea is to get the concept. Sit down and draw it. Then try to work it with the pattern. I usually find the best thing to do is to find something you can wear that's comfortable. Make a pattern off of that and use that as your pattern, and then do your costume from that. You can tweak it as you go. Any other questions? Oh, also on Facebook. Yes, other materials are very easily available. You can go to any of the stores. You can go basically to Hancock Fabrics, Michael's Crafts. Also, don't forget, it's almost Halloween season, so those wonderful little Halloween shops that pop up for a month or two, they're out there. Then you got your standard stores, you've got Sears, you've got Kmart. Take a look around, and don't forget the thrift stores. How many people have given up costumes? You might find the materials or a basic item. You may even find a costume that is perfect just for you. All you have to do is go out and use some imagination. That's what we're all here about. Now, further on, when you're tweaking that idea, another Facebook question is, where do I get my inspiration? Well, did you want to be a superhero? Did you have a cartoon? Did you want to be a reality character? Do you want to make something up? That is another transition that we had way back when the Superman was like one of the first comic books out. And also, coming from that standpoint, any of those materials can be utilized in any way. And if you check with the Tandy, they actually have patterns, and some of them are even free. Well, following up with those superheroes costumes, you want to look at what part did you want? Did you want an older character? Did you want one of the newer characters? And there's also plenty of artists out there that are creating their own characters. And along with those other artists, you don't have to sit with superheroes. How about anime and manga? You may have a certain My Little Pony. And don't forget, you also missed My Little Pony had its own little Brony convention also down at the convention center. Now, if any of these characters strike your interest, by all means, Google it, look it up, try to find your best resources there. There's plenty of things out there. And follow up on that. Tweak it the way you want it. If it was red and you'd rather have it blue, now's the time to change it. You're not set in stone for having to have your costume has to be perfect. If you want to do it, you have a certain idea that you want to tweak it and I want to go this way with it, you're free to go and do that. That's the whole idea of being a cosplayer. There are certain contests where you have to be worked directly with one for one. In other words, if it's red buttons, green buttons, blue buttons, and you have them out of sequence, you're going to get points off. But the whole idea is to have fun here. And that's what this is all about. All right, and another Facebook question that just came in, as not everybody knows everything about every genre. I know I'm learning every time. But a lot of people ask, what is cosplay? Well, if you haven't seen the sci-fi series, cosplay is costume play. And cosplay is basically a run of costumes. It's basically having Halloween all year round. You don't have to wait for just 1 week or 1 day. You didn't have to wait for a pajama party in high school or maybe a theme night at work or another activity. Basically, costumes can be just about anything. I mean, you do drama, you may be doing male or female roles. Actually, it goes farther back up that women were not allowed to actually act in Shakespeare's time. So it was kind of off the beat path. So the transition here now is costumes. I particularly have started, I made my first pair of pants in 1975. It was a Wacky Packages blue jeans. I made it myself. Thought I was pretty proud, but I didn't know how to make it. And so when someone was messing around or something, I went to kick them, I actually split the pants. So for those who are not fully versed with costume play, costume is more or less an everyday venue. It's not just for one day on Halloween. It's not maybe for a New Year's celebration or a birthday party that you're going to celebrate as a theme. I know those are becoming more and more popular. There's also other groups, Society of Creative Activism, SCA. I was a group called Marklanders. We started out doing the Battle of Hastings and started with the fencing club about the same year that I was born. Of course, they were in fencing outfits, and of course they've gradually moved up where now we actually have a group that has its own Viking ship. And we met it out for the Leif Erikson bicentennial out here in the Potomac. He actually came into Baltimore and DC harbors. So if you're interested in those groups, there's also LARPs, live action role playing, and the venue just goes on and on. If you just Google search, you'll find all sorts of reenactments. One of the LARPs that I'm aware of, I've got a nephew, he's very much interested in one of the vampire LARPs, and they have a set time period and certain characters that they play. So if any of these are interesting, by all means, look them up. And you don't have to go to a costume first day out. You can go out there and take a look. Everything is to your liking. If you're not comfortable running out there, maybe you go there and you thought it was going to be great. Maybe it's not your thing. Civil War reenactments. It's not been my greatest thing. I've gone to a couple of reenactments, and it just didn't seem that fascinating to me. But the medieval times, the Renaissance period, you had the hierarchy, the players, and of course there's been plenty of movies. Almost everybody's seen the original Excalibur, and then other venues of that. We've got Merlin on Sci-Fi. There've been several reenactments of that, but everybody has a take on it. So if you're following through on costumes, believe me, there's plenty out there to be done. You can just start, like I said, go down to your local fabric store. You can go to Tandy and get ideas for your basics. There's plenty of ideas out there. And if anything else has any other questions out on Facebook, yes. One more question we have coming in is, what do I start it with? Well, if you're going to Tandy, if you're doing leatherwork, there are some issues where you're going to need special tools. Now, you can hand rivet, and you basically still need the basic tools, and also basically a good leather punch is also good. You can do hand sewing. If you do some of the light suede work, what they call ultra suede that you can get at some of the fabric stores, those will fit under the regular sewing machine. Now, if you're going to do leather sewing, you're going to need basically an antique. I have 7 commercial sewing machines. Most of them are about 1930s, and they're made to do the heavy work leather. Now, not everybody can afford these, and they're coming harder to find, but you might be able to find a Juki or a Taxo if you're thinking about doing costumes in the future. But get your feet wet. Go to Tandy. Go ahead and look for those fabrics. Take a look and go through the scraps. Make a few items and accessories and see how it works. And one thing you have to look at in your costume work is, what does that person do and what type of accessories is he going to need? Batman, of course, has the utility belts. Han Solo had a utility belt. You've got pouches, you've got pockets. Think about what you're going to be. And are you right-handed or left-handed? So a lot of those accessories are basically probably set up for right-hand people. I've had quite a few accessories that I've done during the Renaissance festivals. I worked for Excalibur Leathers and the Pirate's Treasure, and I had quite a few requests for left-handers, and it wasn't that hard. So believe me, if you have any questions out there, all of them can be answered. And as I was saying, costumes aren't that hard, but if you're still not sure and you had further questions, you can just email me at davidnormannorth@gmail.com. If you have any questions on costumes, any other resources, maybe you're having problems like I do sometimes with my internet. I've had an older unit that just basically crapped out, and now I'm using a friend's laptop right now to get me back on speed until I can go ahead and afford to replace it. But by all means, send me any questions. I'll save it up for the next show, or I'll basically answer it immediately to you. So by all means, if you have any questions, go ahead and follow up with me, davidnormannorth@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any of the questions. All right, well, we need to take a quick break, so we'll be right back, so stay tuned. And welcome back. What I wanted to discuss as another Facebook question is Two Guys on a Comic Book. Yes, we talk about comic books, we talk about everything up to par, but also let's not forget the Geppies Museum. And it's not just a stale old mothball smelling museum you might think at your grandmother's house. No, we're talking about history, what got us to where we are now. Now, we have basically, you might have seen possibly your grandparents or your parents have some older toys, and we have some good representations here in the museum. Now, these were functional toys. Now, these are really hard collectibles. I'd like to have one on and show you, but if you go to the museum, you'll see some of the representations where they used to have the mechanical banks that were wind-ups. And you basically would put the coin in and it would transfer all on itself. You didn't have to push a button and it would capture it. So most of the toys way back when were the functionality toys. If it didn't function, then they really didn't make it. Now, further on in history, you've got most of the people remember the dolls. Of course, they couldn't be made today. The porcelain dolls are very fragile. A lot of the buttons and eyes and stuff were glue-ons, and those are definitely a choking hazard in today's standard. But they've progressed. If you've known about Barbie, of course, they've had several transitions on that, and of course, Ken doll came out as well. Now, further on, the toys now have become from anywhere where you had the standard army men, and that's where your imagination take apart. You had a figure stuck in time, and you had to use your imagination to work it up. Further on, now we've reached in the computer age, and in the 60s and 70s, there was a transition where some of the toys became more modern because they weren't stuck in that pattern, they weren't making widgets. These were new, fresh ideas that came about. And the further these came out, I know I remember missing have the big wheel. I think it came out about 3 years after I was too old to ride on it. Of course, I did try it, but I think it was going to break it. But nowadays, you've got the toys where the computers have taken over. So all the kids now are basically working with a computer screen. I'd love to bring you one myself. Nobody's really fascinated anymore, but we still have one of the original Pong games. And our biggest thing was turn the left paddle or right paddle and go boop, boop. That's not going to cut it today's world. But these toys now are educational. Everybody's education level are based off of that. And you even got, the Xbox and the Wii? Those aren't just toys, but also Wii has got a whole exercise program attached to that. So as you see technology changes, it's also changing the way we make toys and how we interact with them. If you're coming down to take a visit, you'll certainly see some of the toys that your parents and grandparents possibly played with. I mean, I remember going way back and they had some of the cartoons that were up later, like Felix the Cat. Now, speaking of Felix the Cat, why don't we go live now over to Andy and he'll fill us in on everything. He's a local curator down at Geppies Entertainment Music.
of the Gato, or as they say in English, the cat. And one of our heroes today, or our specialty, is Felix the cat, who, believe it or not, before Mickey Mouse caught up to him, was the biggest animated star in the world. Felix the cat was so popular that he was emblazoned on all the sorts of interesting toys our great-great-grandparents would have played with. Like, for example, this fishing creel showing Felix the film cat from 1920s, circa 1920s. It's got a picture of Felix. He looks beautiful. He's dancing. It says good catch. Apparently the creel is filled with fish. And it also has stuff on the bottom related to the film company that put this out, Pathé. Now what's interesting is this is actually a British piece of China toy. And Britain has really been one of the countries that's most important in keeping Felix alive. He's still incredibly popular overseas, and a little bit more here. People still recognize him, not bad for a character who in his debut, Feline Follies, gassed himself to death. But that's okay, because he's still alive with us, except for the original one, who is dead. This is a very interesting piece. We, at the museum, have seen a few examples of this. It looks like folk art, but it actually is a 20s Felix the Cat figural head, and we know that it was manufactured because, watch this, oh no, Dad just bought me another one of those China fishing krills this week. Oh, I don't know where I'm going to place it in my teeny tiny room. I wish I knew how big it was. Oh, Cathead, could you help me out even though you can't talk and are an inanimate object? Of course I can. Really? I'm insane. Yes, you are. Let's measure you. Your tongue comes out, and you measure in centimeters, so you're not from this country. You're from somewhere else that does the metric system. And when I say this country, we are talking about the United States of America, not Britain, because you use centimeters over there. And it's got inches on the back, too. Looks like he retracted his tongue. 8 inches long, 8 centimeters long. Oh, and look at this. He's dirty. He's cleaning himself off before I put it away. Felix has managed to maintain a very strong popularity. It's also interesting because if you do this, it looks like he's escaping from the basket. And there's a hole back here, so it looks like, oh no, my cat's got stuck in here. He's probably covered in fleas or something. Probably not. Felix is a very clean cat. We have lots more of him at Geppi's Entertainment Museum. We actually have at the museum, one of our more interesting things is we show movies, silent films, and we have the original Felix the Cat shorts that are running on display every now and then at Geppi's Entertainment Museum, interchanged with other silent classic era films.
Do you think we could...
In fact, we have a special for you right now, an original Felix the Cat cartoon. Let's have a look.
I love looking at myself.
Are you talking?
No, you're talking to yourself again. You're a lunatic. You're gonna crush me.
Well, thank you, Annie. That was a great piece, wasn't it? Educational? Well, we'll be right back after this break.
Imagine being a hero. Imagine fighting the bad guys, saving the world, all that good stuff. Now imagine fighting an enemy you can't see or touch. Extra life, play games, heal kids.
Welcome back to Two Guys and a Comic Book. Thanks for sticking around. We're back from break now. What I wanted to bring up, don't forget, in our local area are 3 regular conventions that come on as Farpoint, Shore Leave, and of course we have our Nobel Laureate, our writers workshop that basically is also at Hunt Valley Marriott. And also we'll keep you abreast of the conventions as they come about. If you've missed it, I'm sure you were at Otakon or you know about the Baltimore Comic Con, and we also had our first Little Brony convention for those anime contractors. Following up on that, we're going to keep you apprised on all those activities as they come about, and if you have any questions, please post those on Facebook and we'll answer those immediately, and we'll bring it up on the show so that everybody else can know about those as well. And again, we're going to keep you up to date on all the conventions. We'll try to keep everything live action role playing, any other sci-fi. Now, if you've been in the local area, you probably already know about Farpoint and Shore Leave, which are Star Trek sci-fi type conventions. But also, we now have Baltimore Comic Convention. We also had, for our first time, the Little Brownie Convention. And of course, we have Otakon, which has been going on for quite some time. Now, that probably brought you up to the part where you see cosplay, live on sci-fi, and face-off. If you're not ready for that, that's okay. We will keep you up to schedule on all those events as we find out. And by all means, give us a up on the Facebook. Give us any links. If you think I missed one or would like to make a mention of it, by all means, let us know. And we're going to pass that along to everybody out there in the listening audience. You can catch me on David North at Facebook for any questions if you'd like to try to keep up on all those conventions, live action role playing, and any other concerns or questions that you just didn't have a time, because we don't have that 800 number to call in. So by all means, give us a question. Again, David North on Facebook, and let us know your questions and concerns, and we'll try to forward those on, and any good updates, we'll bring them back to you live here on the show. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and share those with the Facebook page of Two Guys and a Comic Book. So we'll try to keep everybody up to date. So if you can catch me or the main Facebook of Two Guys and a Comic Book, we'll keep you up to par and make sure that you don't miss an activity that you'd like to go. And further on, we'll be right back with this break.
It started small. Then it went global. Gamers from North America coming together with gamers from all around the world, from all walks of life, getting together to play games for 24 hours and raise money to help cure sick kids. With all funds raised staying local with Children's Miracle Network hospitals and partner hospitals internationally. For more info or to sign up, visit www.extra-life.org. Play games, heal kids, Extra Life.
And welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. One of the toys that I remember, and they also made a movie, was Popeye. Now, some of those people don't remember, but I'm sure Andy could tell you. Andy, why don't you take it away and give us a backstory on Popeye?
Nothing beats watching Saturday morning cartoons or whatever they're shown nowadays. I myself, being an older person, meaning that I'm slightly taller and a little bit dumber, have decided that the world is run by the wonderful world of animation. And nothing delights me more than to watch cartoons about people who eat vegetables. Because if it's one thing I've learned, vitamin A is important. And what's the best source of vitamin A? A polar bear's liver. But if you can't find a polar bear, get their liver and eat it. Then the next best thing is to get a can of spinach. And who promotes spinach more than anybody else that I know of? It's Popeye! And here he is in all his carnival statue glory. This is what Popeye would look like if your dad won him in a ring toss in the 1930s. He doesn't really do much of anything. He has a pipe that's made out of cork, real cork, not the fake cork. And he has the most important thing of all, the Made in Austria sticker on his head. So I guess he would speak with like a German accent, isn't that right? Oh, shiver me timbers! Where is the spinach? Yeah. Maybe. Popeye actually got his debut not in the wonderful animated series done by the Fleischers, available on DVD, but he got it as a supporting character in a comic strip that had already existed for 10 years. It was called Thimble Theater, and you know who the star of it was? No, it wasn't Wimpy, and it wasn't Popeye. It was Olive Oyl, and her brother Castor, and her sometimes comedic, sometimes falling flat on his face boyfriend Ham Gravy. Well, one day, Olive Oyl and her brother had to go find the most amazing bird ever. It was called the Whiffle Hen. And they needed to hire somebody to go with them that was the toughest hombre under the sea. Instead, they got the wisecracking Popeye, who, interestingly enough, had more powers than Superman and didn't really eat spinach. Actually, he didn't eat spinach that much at all in the strips. You know where he got that from? The cartoons. You also know who he didn't fight every week in the cartoon strip? Bluto. Who does he fight him every weekend? The cartoons. Olive Oyl, Popeye, strong relationship in the comic strips. Olive Oyl actually a bit more of a thug, a real Wonder Woman, if you will. She would fight him tooth and nail, and she stood her ground. She was like Betty Davis times 5. If you know who Betty Davis is, just imagine the coolest grandma on the block who takes no nothing from nobody. Little bit weaker. Now, of course, there's always a hobo in these strips since they came around in the Depression, and what better to personify the hobo than the ironically named Wimpy? Wimpy being anything but, promising money for a hamburger today, he would pay you back eventually being never. However, what he would do is often eat a hamburger while being completely oblivious to the violence going on around him, usually involving Popeye beating up the paramour of Olive Oyl, or saving Olive Oyl from when she decided to dump Popeye to go find somebody else, or saving somebody from Wimpy because Wimpy doesn't care and Wimpy's going to beat up, but Popeye is his guardian angel. Interesting thing about Popeye, did you know that the car, the Jeep, may have gotten its name from a Popeye character? In World War II, they released a vehicle called the General Purpose Vehicle, or GP. Say real fast, sounds like Jeep. Now the interesting thing is, why isn't it just called the letter G, the letter P? Well, in the Popeye comic strip, there was a magical creature called a Jeep. Looked like a cartoon version of a cat dog hyena that could just transform into different dimensions and change wherever he needed to at will. That character was Jeep, J-E-E-P, like the vehicle. Hence, reason to believe that that's where that vehicle got its full name. Another interesting thing about Popeye is that these come to life at night. Trust me. Middle of the night, they're all alive. And what do? He asks for a hamburger, she goes and flirts with other dolls, and he eventually waits to find his spinach so he can come and rescue the two of them. Well, that's it for today, kids. I think the statues that come to life late at night want something to say. You sound like a girl, Wimpy.
Oh yeah? I'm gonna beat the stuffings out of you.
You still sound very feminine.
You're doing my voice, right?
No, she sounds like a woman. No, she sounds like a man, Andy. Wait. What? Who am I talking to? You're talking to yourself. 'Cause I eat me spinach and Popeye the Sailor Man. Toot toot.
Bye-bye from Jeffy.
Goodbye from Jeffy's Entertainment.
All right, thanks, Andy.
That's certainly is fine for some spinach.
That's what I'm talking about, Popeye. Well, right now we're going to go take a break. And thank you for coming by. This has been a wonderful episode. It's been nice to be here with you. You can find me, David Norman North, at gmail.com. Also on Facebook, David North. And see what I've been posting lately, where I'm going to be at. We'll be right back with more episodes, so keep tuned for Two Guys in a Comic Book. I'm out. Take care.